Hey guys, welcome to arranging number 3. This is the final prep stage for arranging before we actually start adding instruments to our piano reduction. So what I want to cover today is creating colors within the orchestra. And this is really how I want you to think, is in terms of colors. Now, a while ago, I watched this guy named Jay Allen, and he had a great way of explaining this. It's been a while since I've watched this. So how I'm going to explain it is probably a little bit different than what he has explained it as, but the spirit is the same, and I highly encourage you to check him out. I think he still has a website called Punkademic. Very affordable music theory classes, by the way. Taught by a guy who has his PhD in this stuff. He's a really nice guy. There are 7 ways really that we can create colors within the orchestra. So if we were to take a melody, one line, the first way that we create a color is just one instrument playing that note. That's it. The second way is to take 2 or more of that same instrument and play that one note. So play it all in unison. The third way is to take 2 or more instruments and play that same note but in an octave. The fourth way is to take that same instrument but play it in an interval that it isn't in an octave. And you may be like, well, why isn't that just a chord? It is. There's a great, but as an aside, there's a great video that Rick Beato does about the intro to Star Wars. And that first like, ba, 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 like that first chord, that ba, watch it, but really it sounds like this big, powerful, like this beautiful wash of color. I think it's B flat major, but he pretty much has like, I don't know, 16 instruments or something, I forget, all playing B flat, and then like maybe 2 playing a fifth and 1 playing that major third. And so it doesn't sound necessarily like a B major chord, it just sounds like a really happy B flat. And so that's why I say intervals, because depending on how many of these you stack on and how much you give each note within that chord structure, can either make it sound like a very defined chord or just a note that has a certain type of flavor to it that you can't really put your finger on but makes you feel a certain way, like that intro to Star Wars. I'm actually going to play it for you. Just that intro, Star Wars intro theme, so you can hear this. That's literally it. Bam! Then we get into different instruments. So you're either having more than one instrument, but they're different, playing in unison. More than one different instrument playing in an octave, and then more than one instrument playing in an interval. That's it. And so let's see how this sounds. So here I just have a violin. Cool. I now have 2 violins. Now it's not necessarily going to work great with this sample library, because there's relatively few samples, so they're going to sound almost too similar, but there's a difference here. This is them playing in an octave. And this is them playing in, playing in unison. And then this is them playing in an octave. And then this is them playing in an interval. Now I move into different instruments. So we have, again, this first one is unison, second is an octave, third one is an interval, but now we're playing with a violin and a flute. That's unison, that's an octave, and here's an interval. Cool, and now I even have 3, and this is an interval. So I have an octave with the oboe and the violin and the flute, and then an octave in the violin and the oboe, and I think the interval in the flute. Something like that, but yeah, plenty of stuff there. That's it. Those are the ways that you create colors in the orchestra. Now, that said, a couple warnings. 1, if you use every instrument family to create these complex colors all the time, you're going to get something that doesn't really have any outstanding characteristic. And it's harder also for a live orchestra to play in unison together. So if you want something that's really expressive, it's better to assign it to fewer players, ideally 1. And you can get away with a lot with dynamics like playing low to soft and things like that with just one instrument or one instrument family. However, knowing how to maybe create variation and be able to create colors and tones by mixing instruments and instrument families together is very useful. So that's the first thing. The second is, this is going to be more apparent when we get into production, but we as people can only focus our attention on three things at once, like when it comes to music. And what that means is when you're writing lines, you may have a violin playing this line, and then you may have the viola playing the same line, and you may be like, oh, well, there's two of the things that people can possibly pay attention to. Don't think of it as different instruments, think of it as colors. If you're creating a color with the violin and the viola that are creating this like piece, this larger piece within your overall song, and they're made to be unified in that, that's really one, right? So that's why you have so many of these instruments at your disposal. So utilize them, and you know, don't be afraid to utilize that tool. Also, don't abuse it too much. And with that said, a good piece of something to look for is look at real sheet music. We learned how to do that already, and you'll see how often a lot of these instruments are quiet, not playing for a lot of the orchestra, or they're playing the same note. And that is because it's making room for these colors to come through. So now your homework is to take one of the melodies that you've written and rewrite it using the 7 colors that we've discussed and see how it changes the flavor of it.